Welcome to Sleepscape Journeys, where dreams come alive and bedtime becomes an enchanting adventure. Tonight, we invite you to join us on a mystical journey through the magical realm of Silverwood, where magic thrives and heroes rise. Together with Seraphina, the Silverwood fairies, and the mysterious moon prince, embark on a journey to confront the shadows and awaken the inner magic that lies within. Close your eyes, embrace the unknown, and let the journey unfold, guiding you into a realm where dreams and reality intertwine beneath the moon's gentle glow. Beneath the silver-leafed magnolia tree, Seraphina lay, her head resting gently on its soft, moss-covered roots. Amidst the ancient branches and shimmering leaves of Silverwood, she watched the stars twinkle. Seraphina listened to the leaves rustling in the evening breeze and breathed in the gentle floral scent of magnolia pollen. The distant hum of fairy wings, the babbling of the moonlit stream, and the trotting of unicorn hooves nearby were comforting sounds of familiarity. As fireflies illuminated her surroundings, they dotted the forest like tiny lanterns, blinking on and off in perfect harmony, as if orchestrating a silent symphony. Silverwood was a wondrous realm, named for its nightly transformation under the glowing moonlight. Each night, the forest churned into a silver paradise. The emerald leaves of the magnolia trees became silver, and their flowers glowed like tiny lanterns. The moon's magic not only earned Silverwood its name, but also infused its inhabitants with strength and vitality. They drew sustenance from the moon's light, embodying its essence in their very beings. Recently, strange events had been unfolding in Silverwood. Whispers spread that the moon's magic was fading, as fairies, unicorns, and other mystical beings found themselves ensnared by black vines, plunging them into a deep trance. The Silverwood fairies themselves were baffled by these events. Their magic proved futile against the creatures entwined in the dark tendrils. All they could discern was that with each passing day, the life force of those ensnared diminished, echoing the fading glow of the moonlight. An uneasy tension gripped Silverwood as the encroaching darkness threatened to consume the realm. Tonight, under the full moon, Seraphina felt a profound magical connection, as she had in the past. It stirred something within her, a lingering sensation deep in her core. Yet lately, it evoked a different feeling. She couldn't quite define it, but she knew it was magic. How could it not be? Raised amidst enchanted creatures by the Silverwood fairies, the forest had been her home her entire life. She wasn't precisely a fairy, for she stood much taller than them, human-sized in stature. However, she possessed a radiant beauty that rivaled any fairies. With wings aglow in shimmering rainbow hues, and hair flowing like a cascade of rainbows, she adorned it with a corsage of roses and baby's breath, casting an ethereal glow wherever she walked. There was a magical aura about her, akin to the surface of a lake reflecting the moon's light as raindrops danced upon it. Her eyes shimmered in a captivating shade of violet, reminiscent of a midnight sky adorned with distant stars. Her skin possessed a porcelain-like fairness, with a delicate blush of silver glitter adorning her cheeks, only visible under the moon's gentle glow. Seraphina stood as a unique figure within the enchanted depths of Silverwood, unparalleled in her beauty. She had never encountered anyone resembling her. The fairies had revealed to her that she was the last of her kind, and they had embraced her, raising her as their own after discovering her adrift upon the moonlit stream, a celestial waterway winding through the heart of this magical realm. While Seraphina observed the mesmerizing dance of flickering fireflies, her mind pondered the mysterious events that had befallen the enchanted forest. Suddenly, a beautiful, enchanting melody reached her ears, stirring her curiosity and drawing her gaze towards Silver Mist Meadow. This meadow, veiled in the shimmering misty fog of moonlight, would reveal its splendor as one walked through it, a vibrant tapestry of wildflowers bursting forth in a kaleidoscope of heavenly hues. The music possessed a spellbinding elegance and a dreamlike quality that seemed to call out to her very soul. She rose from beneath the tree, drawn toward the enchanting melody. As she ventured through the forest, the fireflies gracefully parted to make way for her. Soft moss cushioned her bare feet, while the glowing midnight glory vines adorned the forest floor and wound their way up the silver-leaf tree trunks, intertwining with the foliage. The midnight glory, with its heart-shaped leaves and trumpet-shaped flowers, composed of 5 petals fused at the base, adorned the forest with its beauty. Its blooms, a mesmerizing midnight blue speckled with purple glitter, emitted a radiant ultraviolet glow from their centers. She trailed her fingers gently over the shimmering light purple Luna lilacs that flourished abundantly along the trees and pathways leading to Silver Mist Meadow, as if they were guiding her, welcoming her into the misty expanse. With each touch, the Luna lilacs released a warm vanilla and melted honey floral fragrance, reminiscent of tea time in her cozy cottage on an early spring morning. Approaching the Silver Mist Meadow, she beheld the ethereal moon dust mist veiling its surface. The scent of blooming wildflowers caressed her senses, and the enchanting melody grew louder with each step. Stepping into the misty field, she witnessed the silver veil dissipating with every stride, revealing a tapestry of wild hyacinths, geraniums, bluebells, buttercups, daisies, and forget-me-nots. Each flower sparkled like gems adorned with dewdrops upon their delicate petals. A few yards ahead, the mist dissipated, revealing a large boulder. Perched atop, it was a man, his gaze fixed upon the stars and the moon, as he conjured a whimsical tune from a blade of grass. His tousled hair gleamed with silver moonlight, yet he bore no wings upon his back. Clad in shimmering light blue and silver robes layered over a finely tailored white tunic, embellished with intricate silver embroidery. He wore dark fitted trousers and polished silver boots adorned with delicate filigree designs that glimmered in the moon's glow. Etched upon his cheek, bathed in moonlight, were a crescent moon and stars that shimmered. His eyes were closed, lost and spellbound, as he played the blade of grass, as if it were an ancient song he had practiced his entire life. It wasn't until Seraphina drew closer, the gentle movement of the silver mist brushing against his cheek, that he sensed her presence and opened his eyes in shock to find her standing before him. Quickly scrambling to his feet, Seraphina noticed a sword sheath hooked to his belt around his waist. Surprised by his startled nature and the weapon, she took a few steps backward, retrieving her wand from her side pocket. Seraphina, having been raised by the fairies and practiced magic with them many times, had become a skilled wielder of magic capable of protecting herself from harm. As she lifted her wand and whispered magical words to freeze her enemy, the silver mist suddenly wrapped its misty arms around both the handsomely strange man atop the boulder and Seraphina's wrist. It was an unprecedented occurrence for Seraphina, leaving them both baffled by their entrapment within the silver mist. "Who are you?" Seraphina questioned the stranger in Silverwood. Before he could respond, they heard the rapid beating of wings drawing closer towards their direction. As the silver mist continued to restrain Seraphina's wrist, preventing her from casting any spells, the stranger, impatiently wrapped by the mist, sat atop the boulder. A parade of Silverwood fairies rushed in, led by a beautiful golden fairy, shimmering with ethereal beauty, who hovered just in front of Seraphina's face. "Seraphina, what are you doing here?" the fairy queen inquired. As Seraphina began to explain herself, the fairy queen released the silver mist's grasp from both Seraphina and the stranger on the boulder. "This is the Moon Prince, and he has come to aid us with the mysterious occurrences in Silverwood," declared Bellatrix, queen of the Silverwood fairies. "The Moon Prince?" queried Seraphina, observing the handsome young man now gathering himself to stand. He offered a smile, but she regarded him with narrowed eyes, suspicion lingering. "He's here to assist us," reassured Bellatrix. "Compose yourself and let us extend our welcome to the prince. Lead him to the guest cottage for the night." After stowing her knotted wooden wand, Seraphina observed as the fairies guided the prince towards Lumindale, a section of the enchanted Silverwood forest where they resided. At its heart stood a majestic willow tree, its leaves shimmering silver under the moonlight. Beneath its expansive canopy, small fairy homes floated magically in the air. Numerous willow trees lined the edge of the moonlit stream, while in a special clearing sat Seraphina's cottage, adorned with midnight glory vines and surrounded by a garden of carefully cultivated wildflowers. It exuded a cozy enchantment that spoke to Seraphina's love for gardening. As they strolled through Lumindale, Etheria, the second in command Silverwood fairy, guided Seraphina to one of the floating fairy homes beneath the swaying willow tree, nearest to Seraphina's cottage. Seraphina chose a small fairy home with a thatched roof and stone exterior, carefully placing it on the grass a few yards from her own dwelling. With a quick whirlwind spin, Etheria darted into the sky, muttering enchanted words as Seraphina and the Moon Prince watched. Soon the tiny fairy house expanded into human-sized dwelling, spacious enough for the prince to enter. With another spin and a bow, Etheria gestured for the prince to enter the cottage, which glowed invitingly with candlelight through its windows. The prince expressed his gratitude to Etheria as he approached the cottage door. "Prepare a moss blanket and pillow for our guest's stay tonight," Etheria directed Seraphina. "Let's extend him a warm welcome and offer him a cup of tea before he retires for the evening." At this juncture, neither Seraphina nor the Moon Prince had exchanged a word. Seraphina remained cautious, yet curious about their unexpected, human-sized guest. As Seraphina gathered the bedding and a pot of tea, she paused outside the guest's cottage door, considering whether to simply leave the items or to engage with their unusual guest. After a moment of hesitation, she gave a gentle knock and waited. Etheria flitted over, encouraging Seraphina to extend their hospitality to the esteemed visitor. When the Moon Prince opened the door, his eyes met Seraphina's with a gentle warmth. "Thank you," he said, taking the items from her. "You're Seraphina, correct? It's a pleasure to meet you." "That's correct. And what should I call you?" she inquired, her gaze meeting his. A gentle smile graced his features, eliciting a flutter in her heart. She felt a blush warm her cheeks as she waited his reply. "I'm Aurelius," he responded warmly. "Thank you again for these," he added, patting the items in his grasp. Seraphina felt her guard soften as she nodded in response to his gratitude. As the first light of dawn caressed the edges of Silverwood, Seraphina stepped into her garden, a sanctuary of untamed beauty nestled amidst the whispering trees. With gentle hands, she tended to her blooms, each one a vibrant testament to the enchantment woven in Silverwood's soil. With the gentle murmur of the morning breeze as her companion, Seraphina knelt beside a patch of hyacinths. Their deep royal purple, coral pink, and cobalt blue petals unfurling like secrets whispered by the dawn. Beside them, the golden heads of daffodils danced, their sunny hues forming a symphony of light against the verdant tapestry of her garden. As Seraphina watered her flowers, the garden seemed to sigh happily, releasing a sweet smell into the air. Suddenly, a fairy named Silverwing popped out from under the blooms. Unlike the other fairies with golden wings, Silverwings were silver, but they weren't perfect, with a little crimp that had made it hard for her to fly. "I'm terribly sorry," Seraphina gasped, watching as Silverwing shook her hair and wings dry. "But why were you hiding in there?" Silverwing, known for her gardening skills, chuckled softly. "Oh, don't fret about me. Just got a bit soaked, that's all. I'll be all right," she muttered, then hurriedly fluttered off, hopping and flitting as best as she could. The prince, having risen early to explore Silverwood, found himself captivated by the transformation of the tree leaves. By day they shimmered in vibrant green, but as night fell, they turned a stunning silver, aglow with the moonlight and magic. As he returned to his cottage, he paused, drawn to Seraphina tending her garden. With a soft gaze, he met her eyes and offered a gentle smile before approaching. However, before he could begin their conversation, Bellatrix fluttered over, radiant in golden light, summoning them both to the main willow tree. Another fairy had been ensnared by the black vines, appearing asleep and cradled within their dark embrace. It wasn't just fairies falling prey to these sinister vines. Unicorns and gnomes had also been captured. Bellatrix beckoned Seraphina and the Moon Prince to follow her, leading them to a tree entwined with the menacing black tendrils, its leaves churning a sickly shade of black. "It has begun," Bellatrix solemnly declared. "It's time I reveal the truth to you, Seraphina." Her expression grew grave, her voice trembling with fear as she continued. The Moon Prince is already aware that the Shadow King has returned to Silverwood. The Shadow King? Seraphina's surprise was palpable. The fairies had never mentioned such darkness before. "Yes, my dear," Bellatrix confirmed solemnly. "We had hoped that this day would never come again. But it's time you knew the truth. You weren't found as a baby in the moonlit stream, but beneath the full moon's glow. You see, we fairies knew your parents, and we kept the truth from you to protect you." Seraphina's heart raced as she struggled to comprehend Bellatrix's words. "You are the child of the guardians of Silverwood. Your parents and your kind perished the night they bravely fought to banish the Shadow King, saving us all from his eternal darkness. None of your kin survived." Bellatrix's voice faltered with sorrow. "I'm sorry, my dear, for not sharing this with you sooner, but now he has returned to Silverwood. And now, just as the stars find their place in the sky, it's your destiny to face him." After Bellatrix's revelation, Seraphina's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. The weight of her heritage bore down on her, shattering the illusion of her carefree existence. As she grappled with the gravity of her situation, she turned to the Fairy Queen, whom she had long regarded as her mother. Her eyes wide with both confusion and fear. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and confusion. "Why keep this from me all these years?" Bellatrix exchanged a solemn glance with Seraphina, her delicate wings fluttering with unease. "We did it to protect you, Seraphina," she replied softly. "We feared that knowledge of the Shadow King and your connection to the Guardians would only lead you to danger. We wanted you to grow up without the burden of your legacy weighing heavily upon your shoulders." Seraphina's heart ached with the weight of years of ignorance, simmering anger from lies she had been fed, and boiling frustration at the looming threat over Silverwood like a dark cloud. Tears welled in her eyes as feelings of loss and distrust overwhelmed her. With a heavy heart, she turned and fled, seeking solace in the depths of the forest. After a couple of hours, the Moon Prince found Seraphina seated by the moonlit stream, her feet dangling in the water, her eyes glazed and unfocused as she stared into the flowing current. The weight of the sudden responsibility and the unsettling truth about her past had left her feeling adrift, her sense of security swept away by the tide of lies. The Moon Prince quietly took a seat beside her. He began sharing words of wisdom and understanding about bearing unexpected responsibilities. He assured her of his unwavering support in the journey to save both his kingdom and Silverwood. Seraphina buried her face in her hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She had never felt this alone before. Sensing her distress, the Moon Prince removed his silver robe and draped it gently over Seraphina's shoulders, offering comfort like that of a trusted friend. Together, they sat in silence, watching as night fell and the moon rose, casting a silver glow upon the leaves. In that quiet moment, Seraphina found clarity and resolve, knowing what she needed to do. Finally, as they head back to Lumendale together, the Moon Prince explains the journey Seraphina must undertake with him as her guide. They will journey to the Moon Kingdom, where she'll train for her encounter with the Shadow King. There she will bathe in moon dust and learn the ancient ways of the Silverwood Guardians who once served the Moon Kingdom. She will also drink the magical elixir reserved only for the heir of the Silverwood Guardian. Tomorrow, they would embark on this journey together to the Moon Kingdom, a realm that exists on the moon itself. After bidding farewell to the fairies, the Moon Prince and Seraphina made their way to the Silver Mist Meadow, the place of their first encounter. However, this time, instead of producing music from a blade of grass, Aurelius revealed a beautiful silver flute adorned with intricate filigree and crescent moon-shaped holes. As he began to play a mesmerizing tune, it felt as though the music emanated from his very soul. Within moments, Seraphina heard the distant screech of a bird approaching. Flying towards them with large, undulating blue flames was a giant bird, its size rivaling that of a unicorn. Its wings were ablaze with an eternal blue fire and shimmering silver sparkles. The bird descended gracefully as it recognized the moon prince and settled in the meadow with its wings outstretched, inviting them to climb aboard its back. Its eyes gleamed black with the single white flame burning within. Their journey to the Moon Kingdom unfolded atop the Silver Phoenix, a magnificent celestial bridge linking Silverwood to their destination. With a gentle gesture, Aurelius extended his hand to Seraphina, guiding her from the boulder and onto the Silver Phoenix's back. As they soared into the sky, Seraphina's fingers traced the phoenix's feathers, marveled at their warmth and solidity despite being forged from eternal flames. Ascending higher, Seraphina felt a profound sense of freedom enveloping her. With closed eyes, she savored the caress of the wind against her skin, reminiscent of flying with her own wings, but elevated by the phoenix's majestic flight. Though her wings prioritized agility over endurance, they had always served her well, enabling her to gracefully navigate streams, flutter through fields of flowers, or traverse rocky cliffsides. As they soared through the night sky, Aurelius found himself captivated by Seraphina's ethereal beauty, both outwardly and within. Each moment spent in her presence deepened his fondness for her, and he couldn't help but be mesmerized by the delicate scent of her hair, which carried the fragrance of wildflowers, hints of earthy moss, and sweet honey, wrapping him in a comforting embrace amidst the darkness of the night. In an instant, the Silver Phoenix surged upward, its elegant shape gliding through the starry expanse with determination. Seraphina and Aurelius, securely seated on its back, watched as the majestic bird ignited in a breathtaking display of white and blue flames, casting an otherworldly glow across the night. As the flames danced around them, a shimmering portal materialized, revealing a glimpse into a realm of enchantment beyond. In the next moment, they found themselves standing before the gates of the Moon Kingdom. Towering structures crafted from pristine white marble that gleamed under the moon's gentle light. The castle itself, constructed from magnificent white bricks, seemed to sparkle as if embedded with countless diamonds. Each brick reflected the moonlight in a mesmerizing display of shimmering brilliance, casting ethereal patterns of light and shadow across the castle's exterior. As they approached, the gates stood tall and imposing, adorned with intricate designs reminiscent of celestial motifs, hinting at the enchantment that awaited them within the kingdom's walls. Over the following weeks, Seraphina immersed herself in numerous ancient traditions within the Moon Kingdom. One such ritual involved bathing in the moonlit waters of the kingdom, nestled high within the mountainous regions where natural craters in the moon's surface served as hot springs. These craters, adorned with ancient runes, were said to possess mystical powers. As Seraphina submerged herself in the magical waters, she could feel its energies permeating her skin and penetrating deep into her body, reaching her every bone. It was an extraordinary sensation, akin to tiny sparks of electricity coursing through her, imbuing her with a newfound sense of strength and resilience. On another evening, Seraphina consumed the moonlit elixir, derived from a rare flower that bloomed on the moon's surface once every 50 years. This ancient recipe was carefully preserved in the hidden chambers of the Moon Kingdom's castle and meant exclusively for the heirs of the guardians of Silverwood. Legend had it that drinking this elixir would inflict unbearable agony on anyone other than the rightful heir. Therefore, when Seraphina drank it without hesitation, it provided undeniable evidence of her lineage as the true successor to the last guardian of Silverwood. Finally, in preparation for the impending battle with the Shadow King, who was rumored to be gathering strength for his return, Seraphina embarked on training with Aurelius, learning to wield a sword crafted entirely from moon dust. She found herself drawn to the Moon Prince in unexpected ways. As they sparred and practiced together each day, their closeness grew, the intensity of their shared purpose sparking a deep connection between them. Aurelius admired Seraphina's determination and skill, while Seraphina found herself captivated by his bravery and unwavering support. Amidst the flurry of training, stolen glances and lingering touches spoke volumes, their hearts beating in sync with the rhythm of their shared destiny. Alongside honing her swordsmanship, Seraphina also mastered the art of conjuring glowing moon orbs from flames that erupted from her palms. The warmth of their connection fueling her resolve to face the looming darkness by his side. The fairies conveyed urgent messages through the message well, nestled in the heart of the Moon Kingdom's palace garden each night. They spoke of the escalating turmoil in Silverwood, more trees succumbing to darkness, additional mythical creatures ensnared in black ivy leaves, their energy slowly draining as they fell into a deep trance from which they could not awaken. The Shadow King's influence was spreading, casting a dark shadow over Silverwood and beyond. Even the Moon Kingdom itself felt the tremors of his power. As the moon began to quake, its edges crumbled into dust and faded into the vast expanse of space, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. One fateful night, Etheria's urgent message echoed through the depths of the well. Bellatrix had been ensnared by the malicious forces at play. Fear rippled through the realm, spreading like wildfire as more disappearances occurred, and the sinister ivy snared new victims. The Shadow King's grip tightened, his power growing stronger with each passing moment. Despite the efforts of the Silverwood fairies, the location of the Shadow King remained elusive. They implored Seraphina to return swiftly, for without Bellatrix, Silverwood teetered on the brink of chaos. Upon their return to Silverwood, aboard the Silver Phoenix, the Moon Prince and Seraphina were met with a harrowing sight. The once vibrant realm was now shrouded in darkness, with only a few silver trees remaining as they made their way to Lumendale. The once lush wildflowers and willow trees had withered and wilted. The moonlit stream, now a murky abyss devoid of its former luminance, with the moon itself dimming in the sky. In a matter of hours, Silverwood had plunged into an abyss of eternal darkness. The only beacon of light guiding their path was the radiant glow of the Silver Phoenix. As they journeyed through the darkening forest towards Lumendale, enormous black vines slithered from the earth, lurking in the shadows like serpents waiting to strike, until finally they did, entwining around Aurelius's legs. Despite his efforts to free himself with his sword, the vines persisted, regenerating with each attempt. In a desperate attempt to shield Seraphina from harm, the Moon Prince pushed her aside, only to find himself ensnared by the sinister vines. As they coiled around him, dark leaves sprouted, completely enveloping Aurelius and casting him into a trance-like state. As tears welled up in her eyes, Seraphina desperately tried to rip the vines from Aurelius's body. But the warnings from the fairies echoed in her mind. Tampering with one ensnared by the spell could prove fatal. Feeling helpless, she wondered what she could possibly do now. All seemed lost until she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. It was Silverwing. I need to show you something. I think it could stop the darkness. The fairy stuttered nervously, with a mixture of apprehension and determination. Seraphina wiped the tears from her eyes and followed Silverwing through a dark, dense trail in the forest, reluctantly leaving Aurelius behind. The once vibrant trees were now wrapped in ominous dark vines, their silver shimmer concealed by the sinister plant of darkness. A shiver ran down Seraphina's spine as she trembled all over. I thought I was helping, Silverwing began, her voice trembling with emotion. You may not know this, but it's been hard being Silverwing. Different from all the other fairies of Silverwood, and unable to fly as gracefully as the rest. I've always felt like an outcast. Silverwing paused, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and regret. Then I heard a voice calling to me. A friend who seemed to understand my feelings. It whispered to me and it listened to me. I thought it was a magical plant, a friend. But then the plant asked me to help it, just as it had been helping me. They now stood before a massive manifestation of darkness, a towering plant with black ivy tendrils snaking across the ground. At its heart lay a blackened flower bulb, pulsating with a deep, ominous purple glow. The bulb seemed to swell in size as the vines fed it a dark thread of purple magic, siphoning stolen energies from the surroundings. From deep within the sinister creation, something began to emerge. As if aware of Seraphina's presence, the plant began to unfurl its petals, unveiling a dark figure draped in a sinister robe. From its depths emerged the Shadow King, his imposing figure casting a chilling shadow over the enchanted forest. With a surge of determination, Seraphina tapped into her ancestral powers and the dwindling magic of Silverwood, conjuring moonlit orbs, spheres of celestial energy pulsating with the essence of the moon. The battle between light and darkness had begun. Seraphina launched the moonlit orbs at the Shadow King, hoping to push back the encroaching darkness. However, with each explosion of celestial energy, the Shadow King absorbed the power, rendering her efforts futile. Meanwhile, the Silver Phoenix soared above, unleashing torrents of flame to combat the malevolent force. As the Shadow King drew closer, Seraphina wielded her sword, crafted from moon dust, aiming to pierce through his robes. Yet, her attempts proved fruitless, as her blade seemed to pierce through nothing but the dense fog that enveloped the Shadow King's form. As the futile battle continued, it was only in a moment of stark realization when a black vine from the sinister plant of darkness, from which the Shadow King emerged, coiled around Seraphina's leg. Reacting swiftly, she severed it with her moon dust sword. The plant let out a painful cry. In that instant, she understood the true source of the Shadow King's power lay not in his looming figure, but in the plant of darkness that birthed him. Determined, Seraphina knew what she had to do. However, before she could act, the Shadow King unleashed a devastating blast of dark magic, piercing through Seraphina's delicate wings and robbing her of her ability to fly. As the searing pain engulfed her and her connection to Silverwood weakened under the Shadow King's grip, Seraphina felt her strength fading. Yet, amid the chaos, she found solace in her memories of the Silverwood fairies, the Moon Prince and his kingdom, and her own purpose as guardian of Silverwood. With a final surge of determination, Seraphina summoned the last reserve of her power, channeling it into a magnificent moonlit orb that pulsated with celestial energy. As if the Silver Phoenix understood, simultaneously he unleashed a torrent of flames, combining their forces in a dazzling display of light. The orb and flames converged, striking at the heart of the plant from which the Shadow King emerged, engulfing it in a radiant blaze of blue and white flames. The plant let out an ear-piercing screech as it was consumed by the moonlit blaze. Seizing the opportunity, Seraphina drew her sword upon the immobilized Shadow King, who was writhing in the plant's agony. With a swift strike in the center of the dark-figured robes, a blast of light pierced through his chest, causing him to vanish into 1,000 shimmering moon particles, eradicating any trace of his darkness. As the darkness began to dissipate, and the once menacing plant of darkness turned to a pile of ash, along with its vines, The forest was once again bathed in a gentle glow of moonlight. The sinister ivy vines retreated into the earth as if they had never existed. It was a triumphant moment, a victory for Silverwood and all of its inhabitants. Yet even in victory, Seraphina knew that the shadow would always linger, waiting for its chance to return. Her damaged wings served as a permanent reminder of the battle, and as the guardian of Silverwood, she embraced her new role with determination. She vowed to remain vigilant, ensuring that her realm remained safe from the eternal battle between light and darkness. With the defeat of the Shadow King, a profound wave of relief sweeps over Silverwood, stirring its inhabitants from their shadowy slumber. As light and hope return to the realm, the creatures of Silverwood emerge, their spirits lifted by the newfound sense of peace. In the midst of this rejuvenation, Seraphina and Aurelius are united, their bond strengthened by the trials they've endured together. With determination etched on their faces, they embrace their roles as partners and guardians of Silverwood, ready to protect the realm from any future threats. Under the twinkling stars and the moon's gentle glow, Seraphina and Aurelius stand united. The fragrance of wildflowers fills the air, mingling with the soothing melody of the stream nearby. In this moment, they stand vigilant, knowing that Silverwood is now under their unwavering protection, both now and for eternity.